Hey guys. So it is a little bit later in the evening and we are in my kitchen. The book that you saw used as a prop is a book without its dust jacket. So it looked very official, like a college textbook. It's actually just a book about music marketing. Anyway, I want to start this video off with a disclaimer. I'm not saying that you should not go to college. None of this video has anything to do with a judgment on whether or not I think it's a good idea to go to college. I just wanted to sit down and have a story time with you guys and share a little bit more because one of my own personal growth challenges is to be a little bit more open and share things about my life. So that is what we are doing here. So, I never went to college. We call it university here in Canada, just for the record. I don't know, as I always do, catering to the Americans. But I thought about going to university. Now, I barely graduated high school, so and that's a whole other story in and of itself. But coming out of high school, I definitely didn't want to go to university right away. When I was in my early 20s, I almost enrolled in the local university's music program, to the point where I was preparing for you have to audition, you have to write a theory test and stuff like that. So I was preparing for it, but I changed my mind about a month before I was supposed to do the audition. I think retrospectively, the reason I changed my mind had more to do with fear than any practical reason. I don't know what the fear was of maybe like hard work or not being good enough, or maybe a fear of like being locked in and committed to something when I wanted freedom. Regardless of what my decisions were, I decided not to go to university. Now, that's not to say I didn't do things. So I've been to, I don't even know if this would qualify as post secondary education stuff, but I've been to culinary school, for example. I went to like a specific 6-month program in Austin. So it wasn't like like the traditional like French style culinary training. It wasn't like the 2-year thing. I feel like I've done something else too, and it's just not coming into. I went to another culinary school as well for a month in California. So I guess like in some sense, I've received further training. So my decision to not go to university had nothing to do with like a lack of interest in learning. It was more that I guess I was jaded about the idea that it was something I needed, that it was necessary. And I've always had this strong bent of like, I can figure things out on my own. I don't need the help of others or an institution to get where I need to go. And as a musician and an artist and a creative person, I had a really difficult time seeing the value in going to university beyond making contacts because, like, let's face it, if I want to be a musician, I just be a musician. If I want to be a piano teacher, which is what I've done for many years, I can get specific other educational credit. So for example, I have my grade 10 through the Royal Conservatory of Music, which is not affiliated with any type of university, but in order to accomplish that, you do have to have like a pretty high level knowledge of classical piano and theory and things like that. So it isn't nothing. But it's not the same thing as, having like a master's degree in like music performance or something like that. So I recognize that there are different levels to this. But the way I figured what was more important, and I feel like I figured this rightly, but what seems more important to people, and a piano teacher say, is that you know how to teach and you're experienced, and you're good at what you do and you can connect with kids and adults. You're not like this really awkward, it's more about being like a likable person who has skills in teaching, as opposed to being like having the pedigree. So when I lived in Toronto and I was going off on my own as a piano teacher, driving to people's houses when I was first getting my clients, I knew no one. I didn't have any contacts. I didn't have any people who could help me find students. And fortunately, I was able to expand pretty fast. I think I had about 25 students within a few months. And the way I was able to do that was just because I knew that upon meeting someone, like if I had a meeting with them, they would be less concerned about my credentials because they would see that I'm a trustworthy person who knows a few things about like who's like pretty good at what they do. So I thought that while university would maybe be a nice to have, it was never a necessary thing. Now, if I wanted to be a doctor or an engineer or things, obviously I would have needed a university degree, but my interests have never leaned in that way. My interests have always been on the creative side, even things like writing. So of course there's a huge amount of value that could come with getting an English degree. And actually, this is something that I've thought about. If money were not an issue for me forever, and I could just do what I wanted. There is no small part of me that would be really interested in getting an English degree because I love reading, I love studying, I'd love to become a better writer. I'd love to be able to learn how to write like persuasive articles and papers and things like that. I think that would be a really great skill to have. And I like the formality of it. I like studying. I like the community aspect of it. So there is this part of me that if I should say if money and time were of no object, like if I didn't need to spend like my time working, if I had the time available to dedicate to school, then yeah, sure. Like I think I might do that. One idea I had last year was to kind of put myself through just like a self created English program. So I spent a lot of time researching various curricula online from different institutions and tried to patch together what would approximate like an English degree, what kind of things that people learn generally, the kinds of things that the students are expected to know. And this was partially inspired by Scott Young, who wrote a book called Ultra Learning, where he essentially gave himself like an MIT degree in computer science in a year by taking their online classes and basically being able to complete the exams that a student at the university would be able to complete. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. That's like really taking education into your own hands. I thought it was neat. And the idea appeals to me on, I don't know, like a personal rebellious level. So that is something that I would do. I guess, so this was a little bit of like a controversial thing. Especially when I was younger. I don't think my family particularly cares that much anymore that I didn't get a university degree, but it was a thing. Like it was a thing that mattered in the time. So I can't think of a single person in my family, my whole family, maybe with the exception of like my grandpa, but he used to be like a business owner of an accounting firm. So my family is like high powered, intellectual type people. All of them have university degrees and have like gone in very specific kind of more technical paths like accounting and one's a vet, for example. So it's like pretty high level stuff. So for me to not follow that same path as well felt pretty controversial at the time, and it was a little bit difficult. Now if I were asked like, well, do you regret it? Like I've had discussions with friends who were like, you know, university is great for this and this reason. I totally get that, but I don't regret my decision, and there are a few reasons for that. Again, this is not to be interpreted as an endorsement of not going to college, but what I felt that I did instead was the way I approached my early to mid 20s. My whole kind of philosophy was like earn the bare minimum I need to like get by, pay rent, feed myself, and spend the rest of my time doing things that actually matter to me. So, for example, when I was in my earlier 20s, I started a food blog and I learned how to cook, and I took that pretty far by going to culinary school and stuff like that. I've been a musician my whole life, so another path that I took when I was younger is I did a lot of songwriting. I did a lot of like piano practice and learning music and things like that. So I also wasted a lot of time. So I'm not saying that like, oh, I filled my days with these creative, productive pursuits, because the reality is I didn't. I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of songwriting. I did a lot of like practicing, performing, or just like playing with friends. And I did a lot of like random side projects, like, you know, starting a vegan food blog and things like that. But it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't super focused. But I still feel like I was able to, what I really value more than anything is, well, I shouldn't say more than anything, but I really value freedom of time, where I can decide what I do with my time. So when I was younger, I kind of took it too far in that I was like barely scraping by, living in a really crappy apartment, because I only wanted to work 20 hours a week as a waitress or whatever. I've had very random odd jobs. Like I used to sell popcorn in the summer. Like I was a popcorn peddler. I've sold used clothing at a thrift store. So I've had these like series of odd jobs, and it was basically like I never wanted a full-time job. Did I even have a full-time job? I don't even think I did. It was basically just like if I could get by with 20 hours a week and, you know, barely cover the basics, that was what mattered to me because I had time. So as I got a little bit older, I got a little bit more sophisticated with being able to balance that, so I wasn't like totally destitute. So being a piano teacher was a great way to do that, because I would work 20 to 30 hours a week, but I was making more than $10 an hour. So that ended up being like a pretty good way to balance my preference for having so many hobbies and doing a lot of things with my time. So my biggest value I think that I got from not going to university was the value of time, and just being able to pursue my own projects, which is what makes life interesting to me. I wasn't boxed in. Major detriments is I probably could have gone a lot farther if I would have taken music in university. I probably would have been able to connect with a lot more local musicians. I would have become a lot better because I would have been in forced performance situations. I would have been examined. I would have had to like put shows together and stuff like that. I would have been performing with other instrumentalists. There's no scenario that I can imagine where I would not have become a way better musician than I probably am now. So there are some losses that I experienced, but from a standpoint of go to university and get a job, that was just never my equation, and it never needed to be my equation. It doesn't need to be everyone's equation. A lot of people follow that equation, again, like doctors, lawyers, etc. You kind of need to follow that equation. But as an artist, I feel like you have a little bit more leeway. So yeah, it's going to be a high pressure situation where it's forcing you to become very good at what you're doing. But going to university or college doesn't necessarily mean you're going to love learning, for example. So a love of learning and doing things like I do, like read a bunch of books and stuff like that, is something that I've picked up later. That it's something that school doesn't teach people. Some people love learning and they gravitate towards school and it's an easy fit. Some people, I don't know, some people just go through it and go through the motions, but never really like pick up a love of learning. So I guess where I'm going with this is, since I love learning and I always have, I don't feel like I'm lacking for knowledge except in specific things. So those of you who follow Piano TV, I mispronounce things all the time. So maybe if I went to college, I would be better at pronouncing things, because instead of just reading words by myself isolated, I would be speaking them in conversation with other people. I would hear more of these words that I read. This is as a random example. So there are gaps in my knowledge because I didn't go to university. I'm aware of that. And I feel like I missed out on the culture aspect too. I know, like, there's this like college lifestyle thing that seems like such a fantasy to me. The idea of like, like college parties, whatever, all that fun stuff, or like late night cram sessions. But I don't know. I look back on my early 20s and I'm just so grateful. Honestly, like I just feel like I had some real rough patches in there, but I was always trying to design my life the way I wanted it to be, even though I wasn't very good at it back then. So I do feel like I can hold my own in a discussion, in a conversation with people. So there's not some. So what I've felt over the years, there is a tendency towards prejudice, whether from other people towards me or self-generated by myself. So the idea that I'm not as smart as someone who's gone to university is something that I struggled with a while ago. I don't feel that anymore, but it is something that I used to be aware of, or conscious of, or feel self-conscious about that. And though it very rarely happens, it does happen that people will see that you didn't go to college or university, and they just, their bar of your intelligence level kind of goes like this. It's just like your status drops, where university tends to be some kind of status symbol. But then on the other side, a lot of self-made people, entrepreneurs, people like that, there's a lot of successful people who haven't gone to university as well. But it seems like more you got to prove something in that case, as opposed to just being the default position that you're like an acceptable, intelligent human being without having gone to university. So that was a bias I have struggled with. I don't really get it as much anymore. Maybe I've just let it go. If other people have that bias against me, I don't feel that it's true, so it doesn't bother me if someone else judges me for it. So if someone here who's watching this is like, man, you dummy, you didn't go to college, that's okay. Like that, I feel like I'd be okay. I understand why you would think that. It's not a totally random thought. Like that's the way some people think, and that's okay. I'm comfortable with that because I know that it's not true. Like in my bones, I'm not a big dummy. I've also really smart friends who haven't ditched me. basically, I just wanted to share the story. I just wanted to talk about why I didn't know where I was going with this conversation before I started the video, but I just want to share a little bit more details about my backstory in an effort to get to know you guys better. You can get to know me better, and maybe you can share some things in the comments about you as well. Like if you've gone to university, if you found another path, if you found like ups and downs as a result, I'd love to hear it. This is a really long video. I did not mean to sit down and talk for 15 minutes. So thank you so much for joining, those of you who did, and watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye, guys.